So we are missing Edgar today. Taking a screenshot. So I'm assuming that we all did the Thursday's assignment, watched The Martian, yada yada. What did you two think of The Martian?
It was my first time watching the movie, so I was just kind of like trying to take it all in. Kind of watched it at a late time too, so I don't know. I really liked the movie, and I thought it was a good example of pretty much everything we've learned in this class.
I really like the movie. It's one of my favorite movies.
Mm.
So watching it was super easy for me. Um, I think that movie is one of the best movies for showing how a team can function and how it can be successful and how problem solving can come in hand and how everyone's specialty really does matter.
Right. I enjoyed the movie a lot too.
Yeah.
Great book, great movie.
I didn't even know there's a book.
Oh man, it's based on the book. It's by Andy Weir. It's fantastic. Do not get the censored version. You need the curse words in there. It's really important. But yeah, I never even thought of the movie having value in representing cross-functional teams. So the fact that I was able to pick things out there pretty easily surprised me.
Yeah, I never like thought about it that way either until, this assignment.
Right.
But after actually just looking at it through that aspect, it was very easy to find all the examples of how they're using or becoming a team and using their specialties.
Which scene do you guys select for your cross-functional team?
The scene I selected was when they had to breach the spaceship to slow down their velocity.
Oh, I didn't even think of that one.
So that was the one I chose because, it had pretty much everyone in it and their specialty was being used besides, I forgot that one guy, but that was the one I used because I thought it incorporated everyone's the best.
Paige, which scene did you do?
Now that I look back on my assignment, I don't even think I selected a scene. I kind of talked about the movie as a whole. So yeah, whoopsies.
Interesting. I chose a scene pretty early. It's the scene. Yeah, it's not the first scene back on Earth. I think it's the second scene where it's after Mindy has seen like the satellite footage and like understands that Mark is still alive and moving around on Mars.
Okay.
And they have it's just after the press release basically. And then it's when they're first contacting Bruce saying at JPL and like, Teddy's demanding that like things be made and, he's diverting all satellite authority to Mindy Park and things like that. So it's kind of the first time where we see the almost the entirety of the ground team. Really, the only character missing from it is Rich Purnell, and he's not important until later. So,
yeah,
right. So, what are some key aspects of cross-functional teams, and how do they represent group integration? What is their particular strength?
Oh, okay.
I think what I've noticed about most of the cross-functional team scenes in The Martian is that when it comes down to it, there's still an authoritative leader.
I was definitely going to say that.
There's never a truly equal playing field. And I think that with the scene I've analyzed as well, that having a leader conducting the meeting and the team is important because the leader's skill set would specifically allow the team to continue with momentum. if you didn't have someone who isn't used to taking charge, I feel that teams would stagnate a little bit and flounder a little bit. So it's up to kind of the team leaders to keep things moving and to keep things, keep asking questions, keep kind of.
I totally agree. One of the things, one of the things I've noticed personally while being in a group aspect with people is the group will not succeed without someone who is essentially taking charge and leading the group. Even though there might be more than one person that can do that, it's best if there's one person doing that and then everyone else is using their specialized task or whatever to make the team better.
Do you think that the person who takes charge has more skin in the game to say? Like they're more worried about its failure, or that they're willing to kind of put themselves at the front lines, so to speak?
I mean, I think, yeah, that's a good quality to have as the leader, but the leader, like, I don't think the leader's specific role has to just be the leader.
Right, but how conscious of a choice do you think it is for someone to adopt a leadership position in group settings where, you're not the director of NASA?
I think they just do it, like people do it unconsciously, unless it's like a force thing,
It's so you're saying it's generally just based on who has the most proficiency, and they kind of naturally will be able to provide the most, and that kind of you gather the social cues with it.
Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Just to add on to that, I also think the leader is like the person who is used to taking the most risk, and they're like the person that's okay with failing. Because I think without them being able to like fail, they wouldn't really be that much of a leader.
My knee-jerk reaction was to not agree, but I think I do agree. And I think that my knee-jerk reaction is because in The Martian, most of the decisions are made, at least on the ground team, and by Teddy, the director of NASA, and it's kind of what I was focusing on, is it has to be safe. In the book and in the movie, 1 in 20 odds, and I think in the book it was like 1 in 43 or something like that. So very minuscule percentage odds are unacceptably high. So risk of failure in the low digits is not too little. It is too significant. So plans would be aborted if they had a 2% failure rate. But I think I do agree overall, especially with Ryland's scene as well. Breaching the airlock of the Hermes was definitely not a safe play. And I think in general, like being able to take risks, and I think just predict risks as well, is kind of what makes a good leader.
Being able to weigh the pros and cons of the decision you're going to make without actually trying to influence your own personal, I would say, safety or need, when you need to be looking at the need and safety of the group.
Discuss how we saw cross-functional teams in action. So yeah, I guess the two biggest cross-functional teams would have been the Hermes crew, and then the kind of team in charge of coordinating from Earth.
Yeah.
I don't know if any other teams, unless you want to really divide like JPL and NASA apart. But
I mean, there's all, like, I'd say in the movie, you can pretty much break every little group up into teams.
Right.
Just by standard location, even.
It's interesting with the Hermes crew, there wasn't much of a small fish, we'll say. Whereas with the Earth group, Mindy Park, for the meetings that she attended, was a very, very small fish. She was just a SATCOM operator. But then, she's the one who noticed Watney's activity. She showed up at the meeting, and then Teddy basically said, I'm giving you full authority over the satellites. I mean, he's like, okay, like, I don't know so it's anyways, it's interesting that
Yeah,
she was, given a lot of responsibility, probably exceeding her station, but she was definitely the smallest fish amongst, the director of NASA, the director of JPL, the Hermes flight crew director, the director of Mars operations, and the director of media relations. So,
yeah,
but there's no really, I guess, small fish for
yeah,
Hermes
because
crew.
yeah, there's no small
Right.
fish because everyone has such a big part in the movie and in the success of bringing him home
Mm-hmm.
that I think it is the perfect example,
That's fair.
of a cross-functional team and how it could be successful even with failures. That's all I have for that one.
It's interesting. Yeah. So we agree that most cross-functional teams still need kind of an executor, a leader.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to span every single kind of cast of employee customer. It doesn't have to go all the way to the bottom. So cross-functional teams can be made of, project leads and group leaders, and not
Yes.
necessarily just grunt level employees.
Yeah. I remember reading about the whole idea of getting rid of the triangle, but they're really not getting rid of the triangle. They're just expanding the bottom essentially and making it wider. And I really do think that is working because when, like, I found at work, when you just let everyone do what they want to do, essentially individually, where they're more happy, and you just give them a task and let them delegate themselves, they're better. Like, the task actually comes out faster and better than me having to delegate everyone at the same time. It's
Fair.
I found that me just being kind of a support for them has helped them, has brought out more productivity than me telling them what to do and just letting them delegate themselves.
Right. Are you a manager?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really interesting take. I work in restaurant industry and I'm in no significant position. So it's interesting to see how a managerial mindset will differ from the grunt level employee. Do we think that the benefits of having small fish, as we'll call them, in a cross-functional team is worth having the small fish, so to speak? Is it worth having the input and mindsets of those grunt level employees? Or do you think that having,
to a degree,
at what point's
because
too far then?
Personally, this is just what I've noticed from work. When it becomes way too far and way too much when they're trying to delegate other people that's not themselves. So if they're trying to, like, I notice when people are trying to delegate other members of the store that are trying to work and like, let's say, clean stuff, like if they come over like, hey, you should do this and that, and then they get all flustered and like, well, I was doing it wrong. It's different if I do it because I'm a manager. I can come over and explain it better, but people don't know how to explain it to other people without feeling more powerful, I would say.
Right. And there's as a grunt employee, I'd say there's a difference between, asking a quick favor versus, like actually just retasking someone, which is a little too far.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I think, like, as a manager, I know how to now talk to people without trying to come down and be an asshole,
Right.
Where people, like, when they're working on the same level, those people, when they tell each other what to do, unless they're really good friends, it doesn't work well because then I have to deal with the problems and I'll have
Right.
to come in and step in anyways. And it just makes it a bigger problem. So in a cross-functional team, I think it's very important that everyone does have their individuality with one person that is kind of delegating all of them.
Paige, anything to add from your experience? I know you're an athlete. I think that's pretty unique for the three that we have for today. I think Ryland is our other primary athletics involved.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
I wouldn't
I sit
really
down.
compare this to athletics as much as like my job, but now that I think of it, with athletics, like everyone on our team had a role
Mhm.
regardless of like how much playing time they got, and we had like 18 girls on the team this year and only 7 of them play, 7 to 8. So if you look at it that way, I mean, everyone still participated in practice. You have to show up. That's mandatory. And I think it was really important to have the little fish, if you will, present every step of the way because it brought their game up to a higher level. And it also held like the starters accountable because there is someone else that is still there and that wants your spot. So if you
Interesting.
look at it that way,
It's a bit of predatory motivation almost.
yeah, it is. And then, I mean, I was looking at it in comparison with my job because there's obviously like the president of the company works in our building and the general managers and whatnot. And then I'm just a front desk receptionist. And if you look at it that way, like I'm not really important at all, but I still know 90% of the people that walk through the door and I still greet them by their first and last name, you know? So, I mean, I think I'm important, but if you ask the president, I don't know if they would think that I'm necessarily that important as to the company as a whole. So,
Right.
I don't know. It's interesting because it can differ depending on the scenario.
Mhm. Let's see, what else about the cross-functional teams that we saw? I guess for the most part in the Martian, most of the meetings were time sensitive. Either directly, as in we need to breach the airlock of the Hermes in order to lose momentum within the next, 15 minutes. Or we need to get, JPL working on a probe within the next 4 months in order to get food to Watney or whatever. Like for the most part, the deadlines are, well, I guess for the nearer deadlines, like breaching the airlock, that's a pretty fixed deadline. Like you have, it's either, you do it or you fail. There's no second options. Whereas if you have kind of a larger deadline program, like with the probe, I guess with some luck, there is a little bit more you can do in the way of second chances. But the deadline is a lot harder when you have short-term windows.
But that second, so like going off that second chance that you're saying, they wouldn't have been able to have that second chance without someone from the cross-functioning team, from, I think, what was it, China, from their secret missile that they had, without them stepping up and letting them know, hey, we have this to give you a second chance.
Right.
Nothing would have happened. Like that would have been the end.
There was
and you can bring that back through the whole movie.
Yeah. There was a brief talk in the movie about like, do we accept their offer? And I don't think there was much opposition to it, but it was interesting to see that it was, a question at all.
Yeah.
It is.
That was on the side of China, right? The opposition to give away the private rocket booster technology.
Yes, I think so. Because they were going to give a booster in exchange, and this is more clearly explained in the book. They gave a booster, but they wanted a taikonaut, a Chinese astronaut on Ares 5.
Oh, okay. I mean, they showed that in the movie, but
Right.
I didn't.
It wasn't
I
explained,
didn't
but it
know
was
that
shown.
that was part of the deal.
That was part of the deal.
But that's cool to know
So
because they did pan over in the movie directly to him, so they did make it known that he is in the new Ares rocket ship.
right.
But I didn't know that because I didn't read the book, so that's cool.
So it's interesting, I guess. Working deadlines. I think in all cases they had more time. If the crew wanted to, they could have waited, 2.5 more minutes to blow the airlock or whatever. It would have made more windows tighter down the line. But I guess it's an important aspect of knowing your hardest limits and making sure that you have time. Your deadline is before your hard limit, so to speak.
Yeah,
that makes sense. So you do have time to panic and look for alternatives and second options in case things fall out. I think that's not necessarily a cross-functional team thing. That might be just a decision-making thing, but
yeah.
yeah, proper delegation as well, assigning people to their strengths, like Vogel, who's the chemist, have the chemist make the bomb.
Yeah, I wrote, that's what I did mine on,
on delegation.
On pretty much delegation. And
Gotcha.
it was, Martinez remotely activated the bomb. Johansson was the one that came up with the idea for blowing it up. And then we have Dr. Vogel, who's a chemist that uses his ship or uses his skill to create the bomb from the raw materials on board.
Right.
And then I forgot the other girl's name.
Beck was his name. I'm pretty sure Beck is a surgeon.
Yeah, the girl, right?
No, Beck is the other guy. The woman is Commander Lewis. Yeah, Lewis.
Well,
is the
Commander
so
Lewis,
she's in charge
the other
delegation. The man is the other guy is.
I forgot the other girl's name, but
there's another girl.
Yeah, she was the one that did the wire lighting panel.
That was
she connected the bump.
That was Johansson.
That was Johansson?
Yep.
You sure?
Yep.
I thought
there was only 2 women aboard, I believe.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be Watney.
Yeah,
Watney,
Johansson.
Vogel, Beck, Lewis, Ramirez was his name?
Yeah.
And Johansson. So.
Wait, Johansson, who's the other girl?
Lewis, Commander.
Commander Lewis.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So Johansson did it, yeah.
And then, Beck, who is a kind of a surgeon, but
also a chemist.
Yeah, Beck was the one who operated all the airlocks and made sure that the crew could move around. He had
Vogel is the chemist.
Vogel is the chemist, yes. Beck had to kind of throw himself along the exterior of the Hermes, which is
I was trying to figure
terrifying.
out, like when I was watching the movie, in my specific task, I was trying to figure out what exactly he did.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever stated in.
And he just went outside, and I think, he did. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think he's a surgeon, and again, I don't think it's said outright in the movie what each of them did, but in the book, Beck is the surgeon, so he's kind of like the medical officer.
Got it.
Oh crap. I'm gonna have to go get my charger for my laptop real quick. I can do that in just a bit though. So do you think it's time to move on to question 4?
Yeah, that's fine. If you want to grab your laptop charger real quick, you can.
Yeah, that'd be a good time to do it. I'll be right back.
Yeah, before we start the next one.
All right. So the $1,000,000 question. Discuss as a group what we've learned overall in this class.
Overall,
Overall,
I definitely have
education.
learned more about my concentrations for sure.
How so?
And like what is expected essentially through that, the past couple assignments we had where there was a lot of researching. I just
Right.
did a lot of reading about our discipline, like my disciplinaries
Mhm.
and the problems that arise with it, and that
Interesting. I don't think I've learned very much about my own disciplines from this class.
no.
No, I don't think so. I think I've learned how to think more generally. This is a class that, like I like to say, this is a class that doesn't teach you information. It teaches you how people think, how humans think. And it's teaching you kind of a new paradigm for ways that you can, process information, that you can think, and especially in ways that are problem solving oriented, and supersede basically the disciplinary thought. And that was kind of the takeaway. It's teaching you a new way to think, and that is, don't think rooted in your information, think rooted in your experiences, so to speak. Does that make sense at all?
It does, but I personally didn't think I was taught like how to think critically through this course. I would
Mhm.
say I would
Right.
say I learned the aspects of
Right.
critical thinking
Right.
and what critical thinking is and how it relates to the world around us. But I think that we're like the course was kind of focused around our own critical thinking that we have.
Right. It wasn't much of it was more showing you that it exists instead of teaching you how to use it necessarily. There was
It was
markedly
more
little
like
implementation in this class than there's less than I thought there would be going in.
Yeah.
Like the most that we did was Micronesia and then our own disciplines.
Yeah, it was very few real problems in the world. It was pretty
Right.
much.
And I guess part of the implementation is the satisfaction of resolution, which still hasn't happened for Micronesia or our disciplines.
Yeah,
so.
I was going to say there really is no satisfaction of resolution because we
Right.
didn't resolve anything. It was just a lot. It was a lot of, critical thinking.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't know, Paige, what do you think?
I think this class was kind of just whatever you made of it. I didn't really take it in the perspective of learning a lot about my own concentrations, but I did learn a lot about like thought processes and how it can be very applicable to your own concentrations if you make it that way, and if you like apply the thought processes that we learned into like your own concentrations. But yeah, I think it taught us a lot about like how the human brain works, and I don't know, it wasn't, yeah, like you guys said, it wasn't super like heavy with the material. So I think these past few weeks has been the most that we've ever done with the material. But yeah, I don't really think I learned a lot about my concentrations, but I do think I learned a lot about how to take these thought processes and like how other people are going to view our majors and all of that type of stuff into the real world. And yeah.
Yeah. maybe let me reiterate that. Let me reiterate what I said about learning about the concentrations. It's not the concentrations directly and what is encased in them. It's more of the critical thinking aspect of how each concentration would look at the problem. So like mine's business and communications. So if we're looking at the problem of Micronesia, my business aspect would be, okay, well, looking at the resources we have and the economy that's coming with the resources, about the reefs and stuff. And then communications, could be communication between the tribes about the land that needs to be saved and allocated for, I can't think, preservation, stuff like that.
I do
More
remember
as-
distinctly during our conversation about Micronesia that you did bring up both economy and something that I think most of us either didn't find too important or forgot about entirely, and that is the chief's communication. So it's interesting after the fact to remember that you are a business and communications interdisciplinary major.
Yeah.
So
it's more of instead of what's in the concentrations, it's how they would look at the problem and how
Right.
they would think to resolve it. Because when I was looking at that problem and they were talking about the land, the ownership of the land, that was so new to me. I didn't know that was a thing.
right.
So my communications might help with that, but I think communications is more of the bigger picture where you would have to get another specialization or discipline that has more of culture and like family,
Right.
because I think that ties in more with the land, because it's the land is not resource land like we have land in the US. It's heritage and
It's
culture
heirloom land.
and heirloom. So I just wanted to reiterate what I said.
So I mean, I guess in that vein, discuss as a group the ways that each group's members' concentration areas might be creatively integrated. So we've just kind of
Yes.
started touching on that.
Yeah.
So it is blending of the communicative and business, financial, economic standpoints for Rylan. And again, in Micronesia, he just said it's
Yeah, so that's like how I would look, like
Mhm.
that's how I looked at it in the beginning.
Paige, what are your concentrations again?
I'm business comm too.
BizCom as well. What was do we remember Edgar's?
It's like
Edgar
criminal justice
was
and psychology.
I think that's right.
psychology and what'd you say?
Criminal
Criminal
justice.
justice.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Even that seems more useful than mine. Mine is Japanese language and digital culture. So
Well, but yours is going to be helpful to yourself more than
right, it is. It's
because you're going to be able
development
to. There's going to be so many opening jobs that are going to open up to you
Mhm.
in the future from
Right.
those disciplines that you have. 'Cause
it's
they're-
hard. It's hard to kind of think about how to integrate two concentrations when one of the concentration is just a language.
language. Yeah.
It is, how do you integrate that per se? I guess the language is useful because, whenever you learn another language, it is like an entire large percentage of the earth becomes available to you, so to speak. Just like entire
Yeah.
new set of information that exists on the planet becomes information that you can process.
Mhm.
But that doesn't necessarily,
Doesn't mean you can't.
it doesn't, flavor
use
your
the
other one
information,
necessarily.
retain the information.
Right. So
I think yours, you would have to just go off the culture of Japan around language.
I mean, digital culture discusses everything from, memetics to sensor arrays and systems and, hardware, software, all the stuff, basically. It's how we interact with virtual and real presence digitally. But again, flavoring that with, Japanese is a little weird.
I think I did number 5 for mine. How it's kind of integrated.
Yeah, you've already done that.
Okay.
So yeah, it's basically just immersion into, I guess, the Japanese market, society, industrial machine,
Mhm.
more than Japanese digital culture. Well, then this is our final meeting together, it would seem. So
Yeah.
anything else to add? Any conversations we wish to continue with?
I don't really have much.
Nothing more. Awesome. Then I'll stop our recording.